Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. $15 Million Merits, Black Mirror Season 1, Episode 2. And spoiler warning, I'm diving right into this. This episode's 7 years old. If you care, you should have seen it by now. So, boy, it is hard to know where to start with this one. This is dealing with a lot of stuff, which has been sort of a sticking point for me previously. Like the episode Archangel, I criticized for having a couple of elements and not seeming to know what its central one was, and sort of I didn't feel like it juggled things very well. So I do want to clarify that in this point, how many things are going on and feeding into the story actually does work for me. I think the various things just feed into each other better and more cleanly than they did for Archangel, whereas Archangel, they were similar, tangential, but narratively they didn't quite build on each other. Here I feel like all the different elements do. And I mean, just trying to parse it out in my head, I'll probably even miss stuff, but things from the drudgery of a work day to the artificiality of existence to putting value on stuff that isn't even physical and real but still tempting you to spend your money on it, to literally have to give up something for anything, even the ability to just skip being advertised at. The claim of here's this dream you could achieve, at the end, holy crap, the co-opting of revolution and anger by the corporate entities that it was originally directed at, who go, I like your spirit, I'll pay you to do that, and that it works. And yeah, that friggin' happens there. Oh boy. So let's start with the performances. So I'm probably gonna butcher his last name, but I'm gonna try. Daniel Kaluuya, who I of course know from Get Out, which was my favorite movie of last year, and he's up for an Oscar, so fingers crossed for that. He is he's really good on this, and I suspected watching this, I'm like, I bet Jordan Peele saw his performance in this, and it's a big part of why he got cast in Get Out. And I checked, and yes, it is. This guy does intense really well, and it's difficult sometimes to really put into words how hard that is, because oftentimes actors trying to be intense just get louder, or just try and go bug-eyed, or they it just feels like an affectation. It doesn't feel like genuine, like, intensity, where I'm watching him and I feel like I'm seeing his heart rate increase, like just watching him. He does that so well. And I mean, even before that, he sells it really well. The whole initial sort of plot hinges on something that usually bothers me, which is this kind of, I don't want to say love at first sight, because I find it to be kind of belittling to the concept of love, but infatuation at first sight, which is an inciting incident in a heck of a lot of stories, TVs, movies, books, what have you. And as a rule of thumb, I really don't like it. It actually works for me here largely, again, as has frequently been the case with Black Mirror, because of really smart writing, because just that line that Bing has, just saying, this is the first real thing I've experienced. And with how artificial and confined the world that he lives in is, I actually could believe that this one tiny, tenuous thread of a connection that he feels to someone, he's going to cling to and go all in on, because he's feeling something that he doesn't feel otherwise. So I actually buy it in this. Whereas usually these sorts of setups, I wouldn't buy it. I thought there was going to be a twist reveal as to sort of the nature of the world. I was expecting something like either she or he or somebody was going to like win the contest and find out, no, there is no better life. There is no outside world. It's really all just this. Kind of the Running Man twist. If you know that movie, boy, that's an old enough movie that I can't count on people catching that reference anymore. In any case, I was expecting something along those lines. So the fact that it doesn't really go there at all and instead just keeps it insular on this society that is powered by people and then drip feeds them just enough to keep them going, literally spinning their wheels. And it just goes all in on that and zeroes in on that. That was really interesting. I mean, I think the point at which I realized I don't know where this is going was when he knuckled down to get that 15 million again. And he's watching the thing fade on his hand. He's just working. And then as soon as he hits 15 million, doesn't even go over, stops dead, gets himself a ticket. I'm like, I don't know where he's going with this. And when he broke out the shard of glass initially, I was like, he's gonna attack the judges, but he didn't. And again, the intensity of the delivery of that was monumental. I mean, really, the amount of anger and rage and frustration and how real it felt. I mean, this truly felt like somebody lashing out at a world that he couldn't stand. And then that quiet moment of the guy offering him to let him do that professionally. And he does. He does a live stream with a thing held to his neck twice a week. And like I said, it's the co-opting of rebellion because it's cool and it sells. And well, in the real world, money, but in the context of this episode, you know, the opportunity for something better than you have is a massive temptation. You lose your passion to break the system when the system does right by you. So even if you came up knowing how the system breaks people, having watched it firsthand, having been deeply, directly affected by it, if you have a chance to be at the top, that's really hard to turn down, and most people can't. And even he, despite how pure his anger and his rage was, he still couldn't do it, which I think is very human. And I like the very melancholy note of him in his room just looking out at the forest and not making it clear his state of mind anymore. He's kind of inscrutable. Which I appreciate and I enjoy. I think it would have undercut things like to have a tear go down or be really clear that, oh, he's just as miserable here as elsewhere. No, we don't know if he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he's genuinely happier. Maybe right now he's happier. Maybe he won't be later. Who knows? Yeah, that's all interpretable, and I think that was a really good call. If I had a complaint, it's not a problem with the narrative. It's more like just something that I just take issue with as a general thing. I take frustration with the feeding in of the stereotype of sex workers as being drugged out and coerced. And I don't want to dive into this too deeply, but I mean, and I'm by no means am I saying that never happens in various sex work, because it certainly does. But it's also the reigning stereotype that if someone is doing it, it could only possibly be because they were coerced or drugged or both. It's just a stereotype that I've gotten frustrated because it's almost exclusively the stereotype of anyone who's involved in that kind of work on any level is either a scumbag or a victim. And I mean, that's just frustrating for me. But at the same time, as much as that is kind of an item for me personally, I will also acknowledge that for the purposes of this story and what the narrative is doing, it does make sense. And it is justified. So I'm not actually upset with the show for doing that. It's more like a reminder of my frustration with the fact that is almost the completely, entirely certainly the prevalent, if not the entirety, of how sex work gets portrayed in popular culture, and that's just something that frustrates me in general. Not this show's fault, but really that's kind of the only thing that I could possibly complain about this with, and that's again not a problem with the episode. That's my baggage. So yeah, 15 million merits. Like I said, there's a lot going on here, and for how much there is going on, it really is marvelously balanced, and I think we get just the right dosage of seeing the other people there, how they react or respond to this world that they live in, whether they seem to be longing for more, whether they are just apathetic to it, whether they have completely bought into it, and we get those layers, we get those levels, and this is a real complete package of a story. You feel like, not knowing, how exactly the world became this, it makes total self-contained sense. Regardless of the specifics of how we got here, it's not as insanely far-fetched, especially if you're willing to be metaphorical with it, in terms of the whole, spinning your wheels to make credit to buy things that you don't need. So this was a pointed one. This one was sharp. This one wasn't so much necessarily, at least for me, about that sort of sinking, oh my god, that I sometimes get from Black Mirror. But this is the one that I would label most appropriately as satire, as pointed satirical commentary, as opposed to just sort of extrapolation into a horrific possibility. And really well done. So Black Mirror, 15 million merits. What were your thoughts on this one? Well, whatever they were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Do all that stuff. You know what it is. Likes and subscribes and Twitter follows and Patreon support. Maybe, options there. Links for all that stuff's down below. And until next time, this council is adjourned.